Hello Year 11. Our work over the last 2 weeks of term is going to be looking at your mock exam feedback and looking at how we can make improvements based on your responses. So this was paper 1, Explorations in Creative Reading and Writing. We've done our usual Where Are You Now kind of statements of results which show you how you've done on each question, which questions are your strengths, and then which questions you could improve on in order to increase your grade. This will give you an idea as well whether or not your reading or your writing is stronger, and lets you see really what your current position is in English language. There is an important message on the screen though there, and that is that now is not the summer. So whatever you've got now, if you're delighted with it, that's great, but you need to sustain the quality of what you've done for the summer. And if you're disappointed with what you're looking at on that piece of paper, then there's time to change it, and there is time to make improvements and develop skills so that in the summer you'll achieve better. If you are at home at the moment, then we will get that Where Are You Now slip and your exam paper home to you. So if you do the tasks as well as you can until that arrives, that would be great. As I've said, this is all about how you've done on that mock exam, and we're going to explore that paper again, looking at example responses and looking at how our answers could have been better, because there are some important patterns that we need to look at across the year group and see how we can develop those skills. We can then apply it to a new exam paper, so you'll have the chance to practice it across a new set of texts. There's a little reminder on the screen there about how this paper is structured. And if you remember, we do advise you to do it backwards in the sense that you do the writing task first. So that's a piece of descriptive or narrative writing. Remember, that's worth half of the marks on this paper. So it's worth 40 out of the 80. You are marked on the content of what you write, how you organise it, your vocabulary, and also the technical accuracy of your sentence structures and your punctuation. The other half of the marks are across the reading section, and we would suggest you do that after you've completed the writing, and that you do those questions in order 1, 2, 3 and then 4. Question 1 is the 4 marker, where you are asked to list 4 things from the text. Question 2, you're evaluating the writer's use of language in a particular section. They zoom in on one part of the text. Question 3 is looking at how effectively the text has been structured in order to interest the reader. And question number 4 gives you a statement and asks you to what extent you agree with that statement, but you need to evaluate the text as you do that, and we'll look at that in more detail when we get to it, because that is a big mark question and is a priority that, based on your mock feedback. So over our next few lessons, we're going to go through this question by question. Over the course of the first week, we'll look at each of the questions from the mock. So we'll start with question 5 and then question 1, 2, 3 and 4. And we'll be able to cover that. That's 4 lessons worth of work. And then the work for next week, we'll be looking at a new exam paper. And again, that would be 4 lessons work. So we're going to start, first of all, with the writing task. So the first thing you need to do is to remind yourself of the writing tasks. These are all on Firefly, so if you don't have your paper yet, you can access the PDFs of the exam papers on the Firefly site. Section B is the writing section, and you are advised to spend 45 minutes on it. It seems like an obvious thing to say, but it does remind you to write in full sentences. You are reminded of the need to plan, and we'll see some examples in a second that show you why planning is really important. And you should also leave enough time to check your work at the end. So out of that 45 minutes, we would expect you to spend 5 minutes planning, 35 minutes writing and 5 minutes checking your work at the end. It really is the quality of what you write rather than the quantity. If you write a side and a half, that's enough, that's fine. So this task, you have a choice when it comes to the writing task on paper 1. So you either had to write a story about a magical world suggested by that picture, and suggested is the key word there. You can obviously go beyond the outside of that picture when you're thinking about what you want to write. Or you can describe a place that you think is beautiful. You can see at the bottom of the page there that it reminds you of how the marks are allocated. So out of the 40 marks that are available for this question, 24 of them are for your content and your organisation. So that's your ideas, your vocabulary, how you organise your work, so the paragraphing of your work. And if you don't paragraph your writing, that massively reduces the number of marks that you can get. And then 16 marks are for your technical accuracy. So that does cover things like spelling, punctuation and grammar, but it also includes the crafting of your sentences. So a lot of you will have EBIs around using more upgraded writing structures. So you'll see that in a second when we start to go through the questions in detail. You'll see for each of the questions that we look at, there is a little mini examiner's report. This picks out the key trends, the key things that we noticed when we marked your exam papers, and these are the things that would make the biggest differences to your marks. So the first thing about the writing is that planning made a huge difference. Where people did spend some time planning at the start of that exam question, they tended to produce a better piece of writing. It was more controlled, there was a sense of shape to it, it was clear to see that the sequence of ideas in that piece. Without planning, it did tend to lack that shape, and that did affect the mark that was given. On the describe a place task, some answers, some people produce some really factual pieces of description, maybe of a city that they'd been to, and that made the writing less effective. The better responses created a really powerful atmosphere in the text. So rather than just including the facts of what was there, really captured the atmosphere, the sensory detail, the smells, the sights, everything that was there, the sounds, and building that atmosphere, it creates a really effective piece of writing. So again, that was a signpost to a better mark on the piece. Where people did the writing suggested by the image task, the best responses focused on a really crafted, simple piece of writing rather than really complicated plots. You only have, as I've said, out of that 45 minutes, we would only expect you to write for 35. So if you put lots and lots of characters or complicated worlds in there, it makes it really hard to make it complete within 35 minutes. Avoid those cliches, those kind of worn out storylines that end with "it was all a dream," or very complicated fantastical plots that involve fairies and unicorns and all kinds of other elaborate details. Keep it much more simple, keep it really crafted, and it will be more effective as a result and more successful from an examiner's point of view. Now, these last two things made a big difference to the marks awarded. Sentence variety made a huge difference, and that's why one of the tasks that you're going to have a look at is linked to upgraded sentences. The other thing is that a lack of paragraphs really limited marks. If you do not paragraph your writing, you limit your mark to a very low band in the mark scheme. If you realise after a while that you haven't paragraphed, you can indicate that with a double forward slash or put a little new paragraph note, and the examiner will give you the credit as if you'd done it first of all. So if you notice you've missed them, it's always better to go back and add them in than just carry on without them. Okay, so those were the key points, and that's what we're going to work on developing in this piece of work. To help you to understand where those examiners' comments have come from and what they relate to, we've chosen 2 or 3 pieces of work for you to have a look at. These are example responses that illustrate some of those qualities. So the first one that I would like you to have a look at is this one. Now this is on Firefly for you, so it's probably easier to read it from there than it is from this screen. So what I suggest you do is that you pause the video, go and have a look at this piece of work. What I just want to highlight before you go and do that is firstly look at the plan and how this person has really crafted the sequence. They've thought about how this piece of writing is going to develop throughout the steps of the text. Now they've also chosen quite a nice circular kind of narrative. There's a symmetry to it. It ends in a very similar way to it starts. So that's a nice feature that this person's really thought about. You can see from the text that there's a lot of kind of bluey-green highlighting on there as well. That's where the vocabulary choices have been really effective. And again, effective vocabulary instantly lifts the mark that piece of work would get. So you've got a couple of pages of the work on there. And then you've got the last part of it here. Again, I would highlight the length of it. It's just over a couple of sides. That's more than enough to achieve really well on this question. So pause the video and have a little look at that piece of writing and then press play when you're ready. This second piece is for the description of a place task. So whilst that first one was the writing suggested by the image, this one is the second of the options. Again, the highlighting reflects the vocabulary choices, some really crafted vocabulary that's in there, vast, mesmerising. the way that it talks about the golden sunspots where the lights bounced and scattered around the room. So really quite visual and powerful vocabulary that this person has used to create a powerful description. So that really illustrates the atmosphere that we talked about in that little examiner's report that you've already seen. This one, and again, it is on Firefly, so you don't have to try and read it from this screen. This person has done the description of a place, and they've described the Lake District. Again, they've really focused on that atmosphere and lots of sensory details. They've talked about the touch of the grass, the soft green blades, and again, just a really atmospheric, powerful piece of writing. So you can have a look at those as examples of how to achieve well on this question of paper 1. So based on what you've just seen in the mark scheme there, where sentence variety really is the key to the higher marks in the writing, what we're going to have a little look at is the use of upgraded sentence structures. You've used these lots of times in your English lessons, and this is just about developing your confidence with them and giving you the opportunity to practice using them. So what you can see on the screen there, and again, these are on Firefly on the site for you to have a look at, there is an example of each of the different structures that we've used, describing that forest really is what we've based them on. So you can see up at the top left, for example, the simile start, like a tall army of soldiers, the trees stood side by side. The not only did the wind howl, but also pushed aggressively through the dense foliage. Triple noun adjective, plus colon, thrashed, whipped and lashed, the trees beat themselves in the wind. So you've got one example of each of those structures. And what we'd like you to have a go at as your EBI task really to build on those skills from your mock exam feedback is to have a go at writing your own upgraded sentence structures based on that image that you can see on the screen there. Okay. And when you've done that, if you've got your exam paper with you, it'd be worth going through that again and seeing if you could add examples into your paper. How could you have used these upgraded structures differently? And as the little challenge shows you in the middle, can you get a line of upgraded sentence structures? Can you do each of the 4 corners? Can you do the whole lot, a full house, and do all 8? Okay, so this, as I said, is one of the key things from the feedback from the mock exam. So by practicing that, this will put you in a better position when you have a go at the second paper in next week's work.